Maybe I was touching myself and there was a window opened. That's all I could think of.
There was a Wi-Fi signal in my neighborhood that was called "I've Seen You Naked," and I'm quite certain it was about me. I have no doubt in my mind.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down to Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast that asks, were the movies we loved when growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like this anymore? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you even know what Blockbuster Video was? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I'm one of your three hosts, Dick Ebert, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, the King B.
Good evening, friends.
And Carrie Pinocchio Gross.
Safety is my middle name.
And each week, we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. Each week, the audience selects from 6 movie choices that we break out our race car, VHS, tape rewinders, and watch the movie that tallied the highest number of votes. At the end of each podcast, the three of us will provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So find a comfortable spot on the sofa and accompany us for a journey through our vast VHS movie collections. You can download Shat The Movies via iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Pandora, Spotify, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review such television series as Westworld, Game of Thrones, Taboo, American Gods, and now, starting in January, True Detective. With that being said, this is an exciting night. Carrie, this is the first time that I'm actually in 100 episodes almost of Shat The Movies that I'm attempting to host.
I know. I mean, I offered to do it for you. I was like, I will rehearse and practice all weekend so I don't fuck things up, because most things pod or tech related, I need talking through. But so far, you're doing great. I'm proud of you.
Like I told you, I said I need to pull the Band-Aid off eventually. You and I did an episode, I think, of Westworld once.
Yeah.
But I have respect for Roger because hosting is not as easy as it seems. So at least I'll try tonight. But King B, with that being said here, what movie category will we be reviewing tonight?
I was informed tonight is the best of Rick Ducommun.
That sounds exciting.
Sorry. I had no idea what I was going to say after that. The best of Rick Ducommun. He's a fantastic character and supporting actor that you're a big fan of, as I understand it.
Well, I was a big fan, I think, before this movie. And this was actually a category that I wrote in. And something interesting happened with this category, because we used to have it where I wouldn't duplicate movies in different categories. So if, say, for example, Dirty Dancing was up for Best Dancing Movie, it was not in Patrick Swayze. But we saw that sometimes movies would lose and then they'd be out of the running. So this is the first time that the movie that actually won the category, we're not doing.
So Groundhog Day was the winner.
Uh-huh.
But we'd already covered Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
Did you guys also do The Hunt for Red October?
No, I wish we were.
I'm surprised you guys didn't jump on Encino Man.
Well, I'll say later on, if I didn't have a stronger sense of integrity, this is the 1 week that I contemplated fixing the votes once I started watching the Burbs. So we got to go with what was second place, and that was the Burbs. And surprisingly, it got almost 24% of the vote. We had 2,400 total votes. So the overall plot, in case you haven't seen it in a while, and a lot of people probably haven't, The Burbs is a 1989 comedy thriller horror film, or horror thrillamedy. I did not write this. This is Gene Lyons, so you can address your comments to him. Setting in for some time off in a suburban home, Ray Peterson, played by Tom Hanks, vacation becomes a horror when the Klopeks, a suspiciously odd foreign family, moves in down the block. Enlisting the aids of his paranoid buddies, Art, Rick Ducommun, and the ultra-military neighbor, Rumsfield, played by Bruce Dern, Ray sends his son and wife, Carrie Fisher, away on a trip while he investigates the Klopeks. When a neighbor disappears, Ray and his cohorts risk their lives to save the cul-de-sac from the evil clutches of the evil new foreign family. So we always ask on the podcast, where were you? What were your memories when you watched this the first time? Carrie Gross, I'm going to guess this was the first time you've watched this.
Why is that?
I don't know. A lot of these movies you haven't seen. You're a youngin'.
I've seen a lot of them. I just don't remember when I've seen them. This one I've seen multiple times because it's in that genre of that like mid 80s thrill-omedy. But I had watched this at least maybe 6 months ago, which might have skewed my voting because at the end there was no element of surprise for me. But as far as Rick Ducommun movies around this time and things that you guys have already done, Spaceballs, Die Hard, Groundhog's Day, The Last Boy Scout, Last Action Hero, all we need to do now is Little Monsters with Fred Savage and Encino Man.
King B, what about you? Where were you when you first saw this movie?
You know, I don't specifically recall, but I know this is one of those heavy rotation HBO movies. I also had one of those cable black boxes as a kid in my house. So I was always up late at night just watching whatever was on HBO. I always liked the Tom Hanks stuff. You know, of course, everyone loves Big, but Joe versus the Volcano was one of my classic favorites. And this is just more of the same to me.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I can remember that my neighbor had a black box. My parents had cable, but the very basic package, contrary to what Roger Roper thinks about me living this elitist childhood where I had every bell and whistle and everything I could wish for. So I can remember watching it on my neighbor's black box. It was on HBO. Loved it. And I actually came back. And if you used to flip between the channels on the old cable boxes, you could get like 15 to 20 seconds of clear picture before it, went back out and your cable box kind of, it did what it was supposed to be doing by limiting your content. That's how pathetic I was.
Yeah, you were nipple hunting.
And that's how much I liked this movie. I loved it. I thought it was going to be great. And even though I could remember every line, this was a very different experience for me.
I just can't wait for Emma to get older and you have to describe to her how you had to tune in back on your flip dial TV and to watch stolen cable. Back in my day.
Yeah. If it's not on the iPhone, if it's not YouTube Kids, she has no idea what the technology is. She's going to be blown away and very happy for what she's got today. But with that being said, let's roll to that trailer.
All Tom Hanks wanted was a quiet vacation at home.
This is what I need, Carol. I need this.
Welcome to Mayfield Place. A typical street in the Burbs.
Morning, Walter.
Where nothing much ever happened.
Walter's dog just took a dump on Rumsfield's lawn again.
Until the Klopeks moved in.
Klopeks?
Klopeks. Klopek. No one goes in, no one comes out.
Neighbors from hell.
It was a nice place to live.
He said he thinks the Klopeks are evil incarnate.
Well, you're much too smart to fall for that, aren't you, honey?
But now...
Carol!
You wouldn't want to visit there.
Ray.
This is Walter.
The Burbs.
I'm going over the fence, and I'm not coming back till I find a dead body.
Ray, do you want him to take your family, kidnap them, tear their livers out, and make some kind of satanic pate? We found Walter!
We got a real problem.
I hit the gas line, I'd run!
God, I love this street.
Tom Hanks.
I think we are overreacting.
No!
The Burbs. It's one hell of a neighborhood.
Hey, honey, I think we should move.
Ray Peterson, played by Tom Hanks, is on vacation from work and trying to learn more about his mysterious new next-door neighbors, the Klopeks. After hearing strange noises from their basement late one evening, Art Weingart, the Petersons' other next-door neighbor, believes that the Klopeks are murderers. Ray, Art, and his military veteran, Lieutenant Mark Rumsfield, watch Hans Klopek drive his car from the garage to the curb, then carry a large garbage bag from the trunk to the garbage can and bang it with a hoe. Ray watches the Klopeks then digging in their backyard with a pickaxe during a rainstorm.
Bang it with a hoe.
Bang it with a hoe.
So there's been a little bit of chatter before we recorded today, and I know that you guys weren't real happy about this film, and maybe we're giving away too much too soon. But I got to tell you, I loved it. I love a good classic trope. When you guys were complaining about how hokey the Blues Brothers was. I thought it was fantastic. It's just this old-fashioned kind of cartoony, vaudevillian way of making movies that I think is great. The first 30 minutes is jam-packed with these classic goofs and gags. It's totally predictable. It's hacky, but it's genuine. And I love this classic style where they just ham-fistedly set you up, all your players and the setting, and even the music. It's like watching a Warner Brothers cartoon in live action.
Okay, so I got to disagree with you here. Tom Hanks is playing the straight guy. He's supposed to be us. We're supposed to like him. But Ray is incredibly unlikable. He's a dick. He snoops out his window all night. He snaps at his wife for no reason. He's definitely a hypochondriac. He's constantly complaining that he's got that stomach thing again. Like, what the fuck does that mean? He doesn't want to go camping because there's bugs and he'll get sweaty. Then he complains about their camping neighbor who has a giant head and will get drunk and fall down the stairs. Carrie, can you tell me, because they later on, his wife says, the neighbor suffers from what is it? What is it? It's actually a condition.
Hydrocephalus.
So his neighbor's not drunk and falling down. This is actually a medical condition.
Right. And it's funny that he's like the guy with the giant head, because oftentimes hydrocephalus, shat on medical terminology, hydrocephalus is diagnosed in infants that have large heads. And so they place something called a shunt that drains the fluid from the brain or the skull into the patient's abdominal cavity. So as an adult, he wouldn't have a large head, but he could have deficits that made him stumble or seem disoriented or lethargic if his shunt was malfunctioning. But as an adult, like, his head wouldn't swell. But I don't know why they had to put this into the narrative at all.
It's to show that Ray's a fucking dickhead. His neighbor's got a medical condition. You know, it'll give the suffering patient headaches, impaired vision, cognitive difficulties, loss of coordination. The neighbor has a serious medical condition, and we're supposed to know that Ray doesn't give a fuck. If you bother him, he'll just make fun of you.
Well, I definitely got the vibe that he was troubled and sort of overly hassled, that he was on. His vacation was almost some sort of like anxiety-induced, doctor-ordered respite from work. The guy's clearly got some coping issues. I'll grant you that.
Yeah, I was in the same boat where I'm like, either this is, kind of a mental vacation, or maybe even that he was fired and this is just kind of a break in between getting his fucking act together. But his whole dynamic, he's an asshole the way he speaks about his neighbors, but especially the dynamic between him and his wife, like straight off the bat, he's an asshole to her. And I just couldn't find this relationship believable.
So we've already decided that Ray isn't the most likable guy in the neighborhood, but we get to meet some of the neighbors. And the main character, and of course he had this category named after him, was Rick Ducommun, who plays the character of Art Weinegert. Did you guys like him, or did you find he got on your nerves?
I dig the guy. I think he's a lot of fun. I mean, again, I'm looking at this thing as sort of a cartoon. This Rick Ducommun guy, I'd never really been familiar with him before, but I just thought the way he pulls it off is great. You know, interacting with the kid while they're both chewing with their mouths open at breakfast, grinning at Hank's wife. You know, hey, you done with your sausage? Like, he's taking what he's supposed to be to an elemental level, and I'm bought in. I loved it.
I think if I had to pick of the neighbors, my favorite one, it would be Rumsfield. I think Bruce Dern is one of the saving graces of this film. With all of the 80s quirky comedy that's going on, he definitely is the highlight of that for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think and I was the one who came up with the category because I love Rick. But there has to be different speeds. You can't be going 95 miles an hour all the time. And Rick is just constantly, hey, can I get a lamb chop? Hey, you got some waffles? Hey, I'm drinking syrup. Oh my God. Hey, I'm a fat guy. This is so funny. What are you doing out there, Ray? I'm going to go shooting at the crows. There was no time to breathe. And for the first time, I found myself thinking less Rick would be much better. And that maybe me liking him was because only I'd see him for 25, 30 seconds in a movie, and he cannot carry a supporting role.
I think you might have been blinded by all of the cameos in several movies in that decade that you're like, this guy is in a lot of things. He's really likable. And then we were just gagged with a Rick Ducommun spoon.
I guess I had my appetite up because I was buying it. I enjoyed it.
So the basic premise on the movie only works because we've all been there. We've all had that annoying neighbor, the one we have a problem with. Have any of you had neighbors that you just wished you didn't live next to?
I can't think of specific neighbors that I can call out for being, annoying or whatever, but I will say that I might be one of the people that is overly cautious and kind of doing my own neighborhood watch at all times. And maybe that's paranoid me. But one night I got a text message from my boyfriend at the time, and I had been out dancing, and he was like, there's this car, babe, that keeps driving up and down the street. It's like 2:00 in the morning, 3:00 in the morning, and they have their lights off, and it's Thanksgiving weekend. And all I can think is these people are cruising up and down the street trying to figure out which families are out of town so they can rob all the houses. So me, fully decked out goth, wearing a fur coat at 2:30 in the morning, drunk, decides to go out in the street and hide behind my own car to watch them. And I see them go up and down the street twice, back and forth, no headlights on. So I stop in the middle of the street with my hand out like I'm going to citizen's arrest this car. And they roll down their windows and they have headlamps on. And so I can't make out who they are. I'm blinded by them. And I'm like, can I help you? And as my eyes are slowly focusing, I see that it's two little old ladies. And they're like, what? And I'm like, can I help you? You're driving up and down the street without headlights on. And they're like, we're with the irrigation company. They literally lift up the ditches at like 2:00, 3:00 in the morning and irrigate everybody's yard. And here I am drunk in a fur coat yelling at them like they're trying to rob us. So I might be the neighbor.
But why are they driving around with no headlights?
Because it's 2:00 in the morning. They're trying to be very quiet. They get out of the car and they lift the irrigation ditches. And so they go really slow with their headlamps to see how high the water has risen per yard. And they're trying to do it very quietly so they don't wake the neighbors. And here I am stopping them in the middle of the street. They're probably fucking terrified of me, asking them if I can help them. But they're just doing their job, irrigating the yard.
So I had a situation with my neighbor when we first moved in our house. And again, I was that asshole. And I'm going to try to compact this story really, really down as far as I can. Move into the house. The land between me and the neighbors is super soggy. So I know there's an irrigation leak. I bring out an expert. He says it's your neighbor. I bring out the water company. He says it's your neighbor. I go to the neighbor. Hey, you got to fix your leak. Oh, we don't have a leak. I said, dude, they just said you all have a leak. The meter guy's saying you have a leak. We can see it. Whatever. Finally, after a month of bitching and moaning, and the neighbor, let me say, is this old lady and her even older mother. So I'm like, can you please fix it? We're going to get a sinkhole. We're in Florida. She finally, after a month of me bitching and moaning, gets a plumber to come out and look at it. So I'm in the front of the house. I'm doing some landscaping. The plumber, I see him leave. No more than 30 seconds later, I hear pop. I run to the side of the house. The pipe to the irrigation is now broken and the water is shooting like 15 feet in the air. There's now a giant hole that's been washed away in my lawn. And there's a paving stone that's been moved from where it normally was. And now it's next to the broken pipe. So I'm convinced in my head, I'm detective. Neighbor's angry. She's got to call a plumber. Plumber comes, moves the paver next to the broken pipe. Boom, I've cracked the case. It has to be the neighbor. Why would the paver had moved? And now I got this big hole. I kind of jumped the gun a little bit, call the police. Police come. Because it makes sense. Like, how else did
call the police?
Look, how else did the paving stone move? The paving stone moved like 8 feet to right next to the broken pipe. So somebody picked up, obviously, the paving stone and threw it at the pipe. Maybe like a fuck you to me for the plumber having to come out for this.
Okay.
After about 12 hours of digging up the irrigation, I get down to the bottom. And first, I find out the leak was actually mine.
Oh, fuck.
And I find out the leak was coming from an elbow fitting that when they put in the pressure valve, they did not seat it all the way. So I could tell it was a ticking time bomb that would have happened whenever. Then the pool guy comes the next day and says, oh, hey, by the way, sorry, I moved your paving stone. So it just happened that the pipe was going to blow it this time regardless. The pool guy moves the paving stone right as the plumber moves away. It took me 2 years before the neighbors would ever talk to me again.
Yeah, what sort of apology took place there?
Hey, sorry I called the police on you. Luckily, my only saving grace was Emma, my daughter, had just been born. It's the stress, we're not sleeping too much. I wasn't thinking straight.
Did you
She
send
still
her an
didn't talk
edible
to-
arrangements?
No, but I kissed the plumber's ass because he actually came back and actually gave me some advice on how to fix it. So he was very nice. I wrote him a nice Yelp review, and he helped smooth it over with the owners. But yeah, that's why now if shit goes down and I'm like, oh my God, I've cracked the case, the evidence tells me this person did it. It was probably just a bad pipe fitting and somebody didn't, sit the joint.
So while the two of you are harassing old ladies for no reason, you bunch of bullies, I actually had a legitimate bully neighbor. The guy was this red-haired kid. His name was Dustin Parsons. He was a real white trash piece of shit, man. Yeah, he was. That's what he was. And I'll tell you, I got flashbacks the minute I saw that. What was the kid's name? The young boy, the Klopek.
That inbred Appalachian-looking motherfucker.
Well, as soon as I saw Hans Klopek with his red hair, I thought about this neighbor kid, and I just thought, yeah, those neighbors are up to no good, those sons of bitches.
So another problem I had with this movie, besides Rick Ducommun being 1,000 miles an hour, is the music. Now, the music on the movie, the score was done by Jerry Goldsmith. And he's had a distinguished career. He's been nominated for 17 Academy Awards. He actually won. He won an Oscar for the Omen original score. That's him. Everybody knows that. But come on, there's too much fucking music. Everybody doesn't need a theme song. The Paperboy has a theme song. Corey painting the house has a theme song. Walter with the dog has a theme song. Rumsfield, we hear his little military every time he's on screen. There's actually a scene later in the movie where the three of the neighbors are coming up to the door to a Western theme, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It then goes to when they knock on the door, a spooky, like Addams Family theme. Then the bees come out and it turns into hilarious hijinks theme. This is within 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think all the music coupled with all the 80s quirky comedy, like, when the sign, the 669 sign on the door turns to 666 when they knock on it, and then Rumsfield running with the hose and tripping himself, stepping in dog shit. And then when they approach the house, the spooky neighbor's house, all this wind starts blowing directly on them to kind of give the portrayal of, something spooky. I just find it a little over the top, but at the same time boring. How can it be both?
Well, it is. So Bonnie Rumsfield finds a dog running loose and realizes it belongs to an elderly neighbor of theirs, Walter. So Ray, Art, Bonnie, and Ricky Butler, the curious kid who lives next door to the Rumfields, goes to Walter's house and finds his toupee in the kitchen. Ray collects the dog and leaves a note for Walter explaining the situation. The following night, Ray and Art have a meeting at the Petersons' basement and theorize about Walter's disappearance and the mystery situation going on with the Klopeks.
So in my research, I found out that Walter's poodle, Queenie, was played by the same dog that plays Precious in Silence of the Lambs.
Is it really?
Yeah. And it's just funny to think that he probably some of the best acting on this film and then ended up doing Silence of the Lamb a few years later.
So am I the only one who, and I'm not going to, it's like I'm attacking him because he's not here. I texted Roger Roper when I saw the scene. I said, Roger, that is 70-year-old you. Albie and Pippa have gone to the little doggy graveyard in the sky. He's replaced them with Queenie. He's living alone in his house, and that little precious dog is his life.
With matching sweater vests.
And you know that Roger would be a dick to his neighbors if they even looked at Queenie.
I have a feeling he might also let Queenie shit on his neighbors' lawns.
Or piss on his co-host's bed.
Ooh.
Topical.
So we're finally introduced here to some of the spouses of the neighbors. We finally meet Mrs. Rumsfield, who's out in the front yard. She's doing her gardening. She's looking fantastic. And I want to ask you too, and Carrie, I think you're an open-minded young lady. You can give me your honest opinion here. Who's hotter to you, a post-Coke Carrie Fisher or a gardening Mrs. Rumsfield?
Oh, I'm giving this to Rumsfield all day long. She is where it's at. She's always coming out of the house in next to like nothing in her little frilly underpants. She's got those big, beautiful brown eyes. She's always got a really nice attitude. Like she's just friendly to everybody. Meanwhile, Tom Hanks' wife, listen, maybe I'm biased because I hate Star Wars. I hate Carrie Fisher. I think she's a dried out old hag. I think the new movies are embarrassing.
Too soon.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, B, I want you to scroll up to the top of the notes here. And I want you to look at that picture that I've attached there.
Yeah.
Does that look dried up and wrinkled to you?
It looks like a mom.
Oh.
Yeah. And listen, as much as I do love a nice looking or a good looking mom, and Carrie Fisher is pulling off the nice summer dresses and the cute little mom haircut, there's just no way. It's Rumsfield all the way.
Yeah, Bonnie Rumsfield. What's with 80s
More
movies?
Like Boner Rumsfield.
What's with 80s movies having this like quintessential babe character that they have to throw in that plays nothing towards the plot, doesn't develop as a character at all, is only the babe for like slapstick comments?
I don't know. It was the 80s, but
yeah, that was the world we live in.
I actually liked her. She seemed to be intelligent. She didn't seem to be out there to really be cock teasing, poor Ricky next door. She just maybe was comfortable for her to garden. She didn't seem to be doing it for any nefarious purpose.
Hey, cool. No tan lines, Mrs. Brumsfield.
And she's like, thank you, Ricky.
She sees the best in people. She doesn't assume any sort of lecherous or evil intent. When they have a later scene and she meets the neighbors, she's the most open-minded and friendly.
Yeah.
She's the whole package.
So, Carrie, do you ever go out in the middle of the night in your negligee and do some gardening?
I don't garden. And no, I don't have negligees. I do have a robe. I'm actually wearing it right now. Black velvet robe, but it's like floor length. So when I'm walking to the laundromat in the back of my apartment complex, I'm wearing Crocs with, God, what are they called? The socks for blood clots? No. The nursing socks.
Compression
socks. Yesterday I did laundry in my black velvet robe with compression socks and Crocs on. So I'm definitely not the neighbor that people are talking about my tan lines.
Yeah, Ricky is not drooling over you. Anyway, Ray's wife, Carol, grows tired of her husband and his buddies snooping around the Klopeks home. They pay the Klopeks a visit, meeting Hans, Ruben, and Werner. While Art snoops around the backyard, Ray reveals that he found Walter's toupee in the Klopeks' basement, deducing that the Klopeks must have entered Walter's house in order to retrieve the toupee. Ray and the others are convinced that the Klopeks have murdered Walter, and the trio agree to investigate the Klopeks' backyard the next day, knowing the Klopeks would be gone for the full day. So a lot of the movies that we do, looking back, you can tell that they wouldn't necessarily happen today because of the technology. And for me, this is a big one. Having a camera around and the ability to record whatever you see, besides making hilarious videos on YouTube, if you look out your window in the middle of a storm and you see 3 hooded figures digging like a body size hole, you'd videotape it. This shit would not happen in today's world.
Beyond the technology, can you imagine just like the political spectrum that we're in and a movie with a plot like this taking place? Like strange foreign neighbors roll into town and everyone who's always lived there suddenly is aligned against them. Like nobody's really thought about that. But if the Klopeks were brown, holy shit, this movie would have a whole different meaning today.
Maybe Tom Hanks doesn't sign on to that movie.
Not today.
No.
But I just don't understand why they decide they need to take this upon themselves to do this, neighborly investigation rather than calling the police. If I saw my neighbor digging a body-sized hole or dragging a body-sized garbage bag, I'm not jumping in the garbage truck. I'm not saying we're going to break into their house while they're gone. I'm just going to call the police over and over again.
Yeah, well, this is one of the problems I have. If you want proof, and that's what these three clowns want, they don't need to go all Ocean's 11 on the neighbors. They find a human femur. The dog digs it up from the backyard. Hey, guess what? Call the police. Movie's over. Movie's over in 45 minutes. Congratulations. Ray, Mark, Art, they solved it. They're big heroes. But instead, they got to keep putting them into these situations that are like a sitcom. I feel like this was an extended episode of like Friends or Seinfeld, where they're getting into these ridiculous situations just to advance the plot. The toupee with just all the hijinks of falling off the wire. Maybe in the 80s it worked, but for me now, not that I'm more sophisticated, it seemed, dare I say, juvenile.
It might have been juvenile, but I really loved the Tom Hanks pulling the toupee out of the underside of his shorts right when his friends are making fun of him for having his testicles in his wife's purse.
But am I wrong? The neighbors are the assholes. Ray makes the statement in the finale that they're the terrorists. They're the ones that are wrong. They're the ones who are terrorizing their poor neighbors for no reason. The movie's making that statement that everything they're doing is wrong. They're breaking into the house. They're setting the house on fire. They're violating multiple laws. And I kept expecting that at the end of the movie, we'd find out that the Klopeks were actually innocent. But just as Ray, has learned this lesson and tells them that we're the thing that's wrong, dun, dun, dun. Of course, it's got to turn out that their poor Polish neighbors or German neighbors actually were criminals.
So not only are they trying to do their own personal investigation and breaking into the house and stuff, but before they do that, they write the note, "I know what you've done," and placed it under their door. Your homeboy, Rick Ducommun, places the note under there. And I was wondering as I was watching this, if somebody placed a note under either of your doors that said, "I know what you've done," what do you think that they would have caught you doing? Like, my mind was racing, like, if somebody placed that note, if these people are actually innocent, what do they think this note is in implying that they've been caught doing?
Calling the police on my neighbor would have been my first thing.
I know what you've done.
Secondly, maybe I was touching myself and there was a window opened. That's all I could think of.
There was a Wi-Fi signal in my neighborhood that was called "I've Seen You Naked," and I'm quite certain it was about me. I have no doubt in my mind. I just came out of the shower and walked in front of the window, or one day I realized a couple years back, like when it was during the spring, the weather was great, that if my bedroom door is open and my bathroom door is open, I can see directly out into the street when I'm sitting on my toilet. So I'm quite certain that somebody has caught me during more intimate, private times.
Well, one time I was in the bathtub. This is the only thing I can think of is I was in the bathtub, which I normally am from 7 to 9 p.m. every night of the week. And I'm just laying there in silence, reading something or whatever. And I just heard my neighbor very quietly sneeze through the wall, like a very quiet sneeze. And I just thought, Jesus Christ, I've lived here for 3 fucking years. And if I could hear them sneeze through the wall, I can only imagine all of the things that they've heard go on in my house. I heard a quiet sneeze in the silence of my own house. So they've known everything that I've done.
Did you hear this?
So in your house from 7 to 9 p.m. every week, it's like the first 20 minutes of Shape of Water.
Just yes.
I'm jealous of you. Do you know I don't think I've ever taken like a bath that's enjoyable.
Because
there's no bathtub that fits
6'7".
Yes. Yeah, I feel like I'm sitting in like a kiddie pool. Like my feet are sitting out. I've tried to get romantic like that 1 or 2 times. It does not work.
I don't dig on baths. I don't understand the appeal of laying in a soup of your own filth.
I'm not filthy. I don't bathe to get clean. I'm already clean. I bathe to relax.
Well, I'm filthy.
Yeah, I've seen your bathroom.
Yeah, but I picture like King Bee's bath, like Westworld. It's like a copper tub with like water that he has to take from a pitcher and pour it in and heat it up by fire.
So I do have a tiny little water heater, and in the wintertime, I get 6 minutes of hot water. I am all business.
All right. Well, Ray sends Carol and his son David to go on a visit to Carol's sister. After Art disables the Klopeks security system, he and Ray enter the backyard and begin digging for Walter's remains, while Commando Rumsfield, again, Commando and air quotes, thank Eugene Lyons, stands guard on the roof. Ray and Art discover what they believe to be a crematorium. Ray then begins to dig in the basement floor, believing that they must have incinerated Ray's body, then buried the bones in the soil. That evening, the Klopeks come home, only to drive back out when they see lights in their basement.
Why is Corey Feldman in this?
Why is Corey Feldman in anything?
But especially this. When I was doing research, it was like he was rarely on set. He had a huge attitude. It was difficult to film with him. And this was like when all the speculation of cocaine usage was going on. He actually would show up on set with Michael Jackson's chimp. What was his name?
Bubbles.
And Bubbles was like shitting in everyone's trailers. And then he makes like 3 appearances that are the, stereotypical Corey Feldman, like, I ordered a pizza and like cool tan lines. I'm like, this character could just easily cease to exist and the movie would be exactly the same.
I'm with you 100%. That's my biggest gripe, if anything, about this movie. I would prefer it not be from Corey Feldman's sort of point of view. He's just that late 80s cartoon character screaming cowabunga and radical. He's just completely extra to the plot. He shouldn't be here at all.
Well, I can tell you why he's there, because during the Burbs filming, this is actually in the middle of the writer's strike. So they were filming it in chronological order to try to give them the best ability to fix the plot on the fly. So they probably said, okay, we need some comedic relief. What are we going to do? Hey, the Coreys are hot. Maybe they can get Michael Jackson on set. Let's get the Coreys. And they just kept filming and trying to fix it as they went. And as the strike went on, the studio decided that they needed the actual writers to get some assistance. So they hired Dan Olson to be an extra, an actor. And you can see him as the cop who's holding the crowd at bay at the end of the film. And they brought him in just so he could give some help on the writing of the plot and get around the whole fact that there was a writer's strike going on at the moment. But they did anything in this movie that they could think to keep going to the end. They were just like, we got to finish it. How can we fill some time? Let's get a Corey. I'm surprised they didn't get 2 Coreys.
I was also reading, with the difficulties of the writer's strike and this plot that just seems is dragging on, that Tom Hanks and Rick Ducommun actually did not get along at all on set. And it was like almost impossible to film a scene with the 2 of them together. And I'm just like, at what point do you just throw in the towel?
Is there a scene where the 2 of them aren't together?
Aren't together?
Yeah, they're in every scene with each other.
Exactly. And how awful would it be to just continue to film this movie that it seems clear on Tom Hanks's face most of the film that he does not want to be there.
He doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to be there. And the reason he doesn't want to be there is because while they were filming this, Big was released into theaters. So when he signed up for this movie, he was a star. He was known. When this movie was done, he was the biggest star in Hollywood. So can you imagine going from Big, this gigantic blockbuster, you're beloved, everyone loves you, and then this is going to come out? And then you got to sit there and listen to Rick Ducommun. Hey, Ray. Hey. For God, 8 hours a day. I would just mail it in as well.
Well, and Turner and Hooch came out the same year, if only a few months apart from each other. And that was like a box office hit. And I truly, from what I remember, enjoyed that movie more than this one. So I just feel like the entire cast and crew kind of felt that.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'd rather be in a movie with that dog as well, as opposed to Rick Ducommun, and I'm surprised I'm saying that. But Rumsfield, Art, and Ricky are shocked to see that Walter's returned home. When the Klopeks return with the police, Art goes into the Klopeks home to rescue Ray, who, after thinking he has discovered a crypt that contains Walter's remains, realizes it's a gas line, which he has struck with a pickaxe. He yells at Art to flee right before the house explodes into flames, with Ray still inside. A disheveled and scorched Ray emerges from the flames just in time for his wife's return.
So this is finally the part of the film where the plot starts to pick up a little bit. I mean, we're seeing some action with the house blowing up. And again, I'd have to say that my favorite part of this film is Dern's character, Rumsfield. And, you know, we get to see him yelling at them that they're coming home. And it's probably, if I had to think back, the only time that I laughed in the slightest was the scene, you know, when the house explodes and Tom Hanks is walking out.
So this movie shows you how different the 80s were. The entire cul-de-sac is worried about foreign neighbors who don't come out that often, whose grass is dead. That's a problem. But Rumfeld sitting on his roof, eating animal crackers with NVGs, falling off and discharging his weapon, nobody seems to have a problem with that.
It's American.
America.
Thank you for your service.
I agree. I guess you can do that. You don't want to make fun of the veteran. But every time we get like that scene where he's falling off the roof and there's some slapstick, the director, I don't know why he decided to zoom in and out as the characters, and the camera would zoom in and out. There's multiple times that they do this trick where they then, you know, start screaming, the camera zooms in and out, they run around for a bit, whether it's the bees, the dog poo, when Rick falls off the power lines and makes that perfect body shape hole through the roof of the shed, or they're leaving the note, or they find the femur. Come on, man. It's not Benny Hill. I didn't need this.
It's not the Three Stooges.
Oh, B probably loved it.
I absolutely loved it, and you guys are fucking jerks. I think Carrie put it best. It's very much like a play, and you just got to take it for what it is.
So were you actually laughing during these scenes?
I wasn't laughing because I'm a joyless person, and I don't think anything's really worth laughing out loud. I'm miserable, but I was watching this going, oh, yeah, the bees. Oh, of course the number makes 666. Oh, of course he's going to hit the end of that hose. This is perfect. Slipping on the dog poop. Who didn't see that coming? Oh, that's great. I loved it.
Were you high?
No, what was I eating? I did have a pretty good gyro.
So maybe it was the hero.
It was a nice gyro. I had made some wonton soup a couple days ago. I was eating some of that. I was just comfortable at watching a movie.
Oh, okay. Well, as we get here towards the end of the movie, Ray discovers that Walter's had a medical emergency and his family has taken him to the hospital. Walter had made arrangements for the Klopeks to pick up the mail for him. Ray snaps at Art and declares that they were wrong about the Klopeks all along. In a twist, Werner Klopek confesses that they murdered the previous owners of the home. Werner attempts to murder Ray with a lethal injection to collect his skull. After Hans assumes the role of the ambulance driver but crashes during the struggle. Ray makes a citizen's arrest as Ray uncovers a large collection of human bones in the Klopeks' trunk. The Klopeks are arrested and the charges against Ray are dropped. End of movie.
Again, this end, plot summary is the only part I found slightly funny at all is, Tom Hanks coming out, blown up, yelling at Art. And I'm like, thank God, I can't stand Art. He's yelling at him that they are actually the terrorists. And then just picks up the gurney and throws himself in the back of the ambulance, is like, take me to the hospital. What did he say? I've been blown up or I've been burned. And
my eye hurts.
I just feel like that's how I felt by the end of this movie. Like, put me out of my fucking misery. It's finally over.
When he throws himself on top of that gurney and just kind of like, you see him just shrug his shoulders and his whole body just slumps a little bit further into the gurney. That was classic. I loved it.
That's exactly how I felt when the movie credits came on.
But look, the Klopeks are obviously been good at this. They've been concealing their crimes for years. They've been moving around. They're killing lots of people. All of a sudden, they just forget. You got the police on site. You get Hans dressed in his lederhosen, who doesn't just steal the ambulance. He starts doing donuts. The police, you don't think they're going to look and say, hey, paramedics, who's taking the ambulance? They're catching the Klopeks regardless. And then when they finally crash into Art's house and it sets on fire, the gurney rolls out the back and then about 200 yards down the street. This turned into an episode of Benny Hill.
I wouldn't mind a sequel that follows up with the Lady Klopeks.
What Lady Klopeks?
That's what I want to know. Where are they at? Hans had to have a mother.
Well, and I was confused by the plot at the end where they're like, your wife is home. And he looks like shocked and afraid and runs towards his house. It's like, Art had a wife. Was that part of the plot that we just, like, did they cut it from the film?
Well, I think he was more shocked that his wife was home than the Klopeks had murdered the previous owners. Maybe there was something there. But the other line where Ray notices that Carol's cut her hair and she says, "Oh, you cut your hair." They did that because there were so many reshoots that Carrie Fisher had actually gone to another role and cut her hair short. So when she came back on set, they had to come up with an explanation of why her hair was cut. But in the mixing and matching and trying to figure out a way to close this movie and have it work, they actually filmed multiple endings. In some, the Klopeks had cheerleaders in the trunk. In another one, which I like, and I think they should have done, in the trunk, you find the two garbage men, Robert Pickard and Dick Miller, in there.
That would have been good.
Instead of the skull and bones. That would have been great. I would have loved to have seen that. But also, in the end, there was a little bit of a twist. The Klopeks actually, when they're in the ambulance, they're supposed to kill Ray, and his character's supposed to die. And I like that ending. I think it would have been good. It would have been a surprise, a little dark ending. But as soon as they cast Tom Hanks, they were like, there's no way we're going to kill off Tom Hanks. So they skipped it. If at the end there, they give us that last twist, I might have had a different view of this movie.
Well, and what do you think they were talking about, when Corey Feldman's like, Mr. Ray or whatever, and he's like, I'm busy, kid. I'm going on vacation. It's like, so is he going on another vacation? Does he need a vacation from vacation?
No, he's going to jail. He's going to jail. That's his vacation. Just because the Klopeks murdered someone, he's committed arson. He's committed breaking and entering. He's kidnapped poor Walter's dog. He's going to jail.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the end of the movie. I was excited coming into it, kind of disappointed coming out of it, like Ray coming out of the basement of the Klopeks covered in feces and sewer water and burned. So at this point, I guess we're gonna have to just go to the scores. So if you haven't joined us before on Shat The Movies, our scoring goes like this. 5 is a really, really bad movie. It's the worst. It's you've been digging in your neighbor's basement. You've hit a sewage pipe. You're just covered in raw sewage. And then it bursts into flames. You get singed. It's awful. A 0 wipe is, it's just, you've been in the hospital with Walter. The nurses have been cleaning the toilet. It sparkles. It's beautiful. It's clean. You sit there. There's no need to take care of yourself because Nurse Carrie, if there is anything left, she'll take care of it. So 5 wipes bad, 0 wipes good. Let's start with you, Carrie. How many wipes do you give the Burbs?
For the record, my new position, I don't have to wipe butts as much anymore, which is why I work there. But
sorry to hear that.
We watched this movie earlier in the week and I gave it my first score. And then I was thinking about it over time. Maybe I was just really hard on it. But to be honest, I just found it really boring. It's not a terrible movie. I just really wasn't entertained. I felt like the plot was predictable. I didn't have any investment in the characters or the outcome. I can remember laughing maybe once. And compared to other movies I voted on in the same era or genre, I think it's better than Arachnophobia and Time Cop and Real Genius. I would say Real Genius is better. Last Action Hero was better. So I looked at my old scores that I gave those films and I had to put it kind of in between where I thought it belonged. And so I'm giving it a 4.25 wipes. And again, like I said, Turner and Hooch came out the same year and it was much more enjoyable. And given the category we did, I think I would have rather done Encino Man than this. I hate to dog it so much. I feel like it's been one of those, staple 80 movies, but I just was so bored by it.
What about you, King B?
I know you guys are just brutalizing this, but I'm telling you, you just got to look at it for what it is. It wasn't offensive, but it's also not inspiring. It's predictable and formulaic, but it's still a good-natured romp through all those sort of worry-free sitcom tropes that we've all known about for decades. It's not high cinema. It never takes itself seriously. Every character is affable in their way and natural in their environment. It's a basic sort of kiddie mystery adventure. It's one of those just straight down the middle movies that you would watch when you got nothing else going on. If you got a sick day and you don't really need to pay attention to a movie, this is a great thing to just put on and maybe take a nap. So I liked it, and I'm giving it 2.5 wipes because I think that it's right exactly where it is, right down the middle.
I think if you have to say it's a good movie to put on if you want to take a nap, that you're also agreeing it's boring.
Well, I mean, you ever see Mother? That's not a movie you take a nap to watch. Like, that thing just makes you anxious and miserable. If you're watching The Departed, you're going to be excited on the edge of your seat. This is just kind of one of those things. It's plain vanilla ice cream.
Well, 2.5 wipes, that is an average movie. So for me, I think it's a 3.5 wipe movie. If 2.5 is average. The script, it wanted to be a horror movie, a comedy about suburban living and have some kind of commentary. I think it failed at all the targets it was trying to hit. It's clear that Tom Hanks does not want to be there. He's sleepwalking through the role. He's hoping this movie will be forgotten. So The Burbs ends up, to me, it felt like it was an unfinished film. I think if the writer's strike hadn't been going on during the filming, the movie had a better chance of kind of fulfilling its potential. And that's the saddest thing I've always talked about, is when a movie has tons of potential and fails for no reason. This had the stars, it had the writer, it had the plot, it had something interesting. And in the end, it just felt like a cheap sitcom instead of a motion picture. And I'm glad you said, Carrie, you talked about arachnophobia. I think arachnophobia did a better job of mixing those elements, the horror, the comedy. At no moment did I feel any tension. And if they had mixed that in, maybe made a PG-13 or had some element of horror to where you were like, shit, the Klopeks are kind of dangerous. They might actually kill Ray. I think the movie in the end would have been better. So all that added up with King B's 2.5, Carrie's 4.25, and my 3.5. Carrie, what does that give us as an overall average, and where does this rank in the pantheon of Shat?
So this is our 97th movie, and our scores added up give us an average of 3.41 wipes. So that has it as a better film than Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's tied with Batman, tied with Weird Science, and Caddyshack is better than this. So I feel like the formula works.
Feels right to me.
It's a weird mix, but I didn't vote on those other movies, so I don't get a say.
You always get a say, B.
More importantly, what would you give Blade Runner? 0 to 5 wipes.
I loved Blade Runner because I like the guy's jacket and his gun.
0 wipes.
I think someday we're going to have to revisit it. I've brought that up, and Roger goes, oh, stop trying to be liked by everybody. Stop pandering to Carrie in the audience. I think going back and watching the director's definitive cut might be a good milestone podcast for us, maybe like 150 or something like that.
Well, it takes place in the year 2019, so we might have to do a little special for that, huh?
Yeah, so maybe an anniversary revisit would be in the cards. But that finishes us out here, so we're going to go on. Unfortunately, we don't have any shout-outs. Gene ran through the full list in his wonderful holiday fireside chat New Year's Eve. So if you haven't seen that, you can go to YouTube and watch Gene read out all the shout-outs from the year that we missed. Next week, we're going to be doing a commission podcast for Christian. And it's a movie about a fun-loving salesman, Richard, played by Jonathan Silverman, and Larry, played by Andrew McCarthy, are invited by their boss, Bernie, to stay for the weekend at his posh beachside house. Little do they know that Bernie is the perpetrator of a fraud that they've uncovered and is arranging to have them killed. When the plan backfires and Bernie is killed instead, the buddies decide not to let the little death spoil their vacation. They pretend Bernie is still alive, and leading to hijinks and corp desecration galore. It was released in July of 1989. and it earned over $30 million at the U.S. box office. So if you want to, stay to the end of the podcast, listen to the trailer, and you'll know what's coming up next, but I suspect you guys might know already.
I can't wait.
All right, with that being said, this concludes this week's episode of Shat The Movies. Be sure to follow us on social medias and share with a friend. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat The Movies. Facebook, search for Shat The Movies Podcast. The website is shatthemovies.com. Email where you can write in with your suggestions for movie categories or tell us why we're just plain wrong is hosts at shatthemovies.com. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, gothmatch.com, Pandora, glutenfreesingles.com, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please be sure and leave us a 5-star review that helps the podcast grow. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series such as Westworld, Taboo, American God, and True Detective. You can find out all that information on shatthemovies.com. On behalf of my co-host, Carrie Pinocchio Gross, and the King Bee, I am Big D Dick Ebert. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
Don't you see, we just uncovered a $2 million error. We're going to be heroes. We're going up the corporate ladder. It appears as if somebody's trying to defraud the company.
Somebody tried to smoke it past the wrong guy.
Very, very good work. How would you two like to come to my house at the beach?
Love to!
For Larry and Richard,
How are you?
this is a place to die for.
You have to kill them, Vito.
I'm a little rusty, but it'll come back to me.
What, should we just walk in?
But what they don't realize
No, we'll stand out here on weekend. Come on, we're house guests.
is while they're checking in,
Forget the accident with the two guys. Take care of Lomax.
Bernie Lomax will be checking out.
Oh, my God. What kind of a host invites you to his house for the weekend and dies on you?
I don't know.
Lomax told whoever he's talking to not to kill us if he's around, right?
Yeah, but Lomax is dead. He's not around anybody anymore.
I know that. You know that. Nobody else knows that. Huh?
Oh!
Where's Bernie? It looks good enough. Let's go.
Uh-oh. Larry.
What? Huh?
Really?
Hi, Bernie. Hey, Bernie, just like last week, huh?
Oh, Bernie, you animal. You are insatiable.
Doesn't anyone realize he's dead?
Hold the boat. Got him? Hold the boat.
Vito, I'm telling you, Lomax is alive. Maybe Paulie is rustier than we thought.
Ooh, Bernie, you're starting to peel. What did you out of the sun, huh?
Is that the killer?
How do I know, Richard? Should I stop and ask him?
No, just drive.
Serpentine! Did you hear something? What is that? It's just Bernie.
Weekend at Bernie's.
Are we doing it again today?
Oh, absolutely. You know we are.
Great. We'll see you later, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, ladies. We'll see you later. God, is this great or what?